In this world, there exists a kind of mermaid. Legend has it that anyone who eats mermaid flesh will become immortal. However, most people who consume mermaid flesh end up dying violently. Some individuals transform into terrifying monsters. Only a very few can withstand the deadly toxins of mermaid flesh and gain the ability to live forever. And Yuta and Mana are the ones who ate the flesh of mermaids and obtained immortality. But the endless life has made them feel extremely miserable, so they travel the world searching for mermaids, hoping to break the curse of immortality. This was Yuta's second visit to this area, which inevitably reminded him of a shipwreck he had encountered hundreds of years ago. At that time, he was washed ashore on a small island by the waves. A girl named Nami found him. Thinking he was dead, Nami buried him by the sea. However, miraculously, he came back to life the next day. Yuta told Nami that he had eaten a piece of mermaid flesh many years ago, which granted him the ability to live forever. Yet, the eternal life brought him immense pain. Yuta now just wants to experience birth, aging, illness and death like an ordinary person. For this reason, Yuta had been searching for a way to return to being a normal human. Later, he encountered a mysterious woman named Rin. Rin informed him that she knew where the mermaids were. Yuta then set out to sea with Rin to find the mermaids. Unfortunately, they encountered a shipwreck. After hearing Yuta's account, Nami immediately made the connection that the woman he referred to as Rin was, in fact, the wife of the neighboring pirate leader, Fujita. 3 years ago, she had suddenly appeared on this small island, spreading the rumor that eating mermaid flesh could grant eternal life. Rin had been constantly encouraging the pirates to search for mermaids. Nami also wanted to find the mermaids because her father had been bedridden for many years. She hoped to use mermaid flesh to cure her father's illness. Previously, Nami had always believed that mermaids were just a legend. It was Yuta's arrival that made her believe in the existence of mermaids. Therefore, she made a pact with Yuta to search for the mermaids together. They agreed to wait for the calmest sea conditions before setting out to sea. So during this period of waiting, Yuta worked alongside the villagers. They fished together, set up stalls at the market together. Gradually, Yuta completely adapted to life here. Nami also developed different feelings for him. She would deliberately dress up in front of Yuta. She always asked Yuta if he could return to being a normal human, would he choose to stay here? However, Yuta just responded to her perfunctorily. But on this day, the woman named Rin suddenly appeared. When she saw Yuta, she seemed very surprised, because she had seen Yuta die with her own eyes. But now Yuta was alive and well. Rin immediately thought that Yuta might have eaten mermaid flesh. To verify her suspicion, she pierced a hairpin into Yuta's palm. However, to her surprise, Yuta's wound did not heal immediately. Seeing this, Rin was visibly disappointed. So, she left some money and turned away. But that same evening, Rin found Yuta again. She wanted to check Yuta's wound. When she saw that Yuta's wound had already healed, she immediately thought that Yuta must have eaten mermaid flesh, which enabled him to come back to life. So Rin, brandishing a knife, pressured Yuta to give up the mermaid flesh. However, Yuta told her that he did not have any mermaid flesh. Rin then turned the knife towards Nami's father and stabbed him. At that moment, Nami also ran over upon hearing the noise, sorrowfully looking at her father who was barely clinging to life. Rin told Nami that if only he ate mermaid flesh, her father could come back to life. Before Rin could finish speaking, an enraged Nami struck her with a knife. Rin fell to the ground lifeless in an instant. Nami dropped the knife and ran out directly. She couldn't wait any longer. She wanted to find mermaid flesh now to save her father. Watching this scene, Yuta also ran out after her. However, shortly after they left, Rin, who had already passed away, had her fingers tremble slightly twice. Meanwhile, Yuta and Nami had already reached the sea in search of the mermaid. In order to successfully find the mermaid, they decided to venture into the most dangerous waters to try their luck. Eventually, as they passed through a terrifying whirlpool, they finally spotted the silhouette of the mermaid. Yuta immediately leaped into the turbulent sea, intending to capture the mermaid with his own strength. Just as Yuta and the mermaid were locked in a fierce struggle, an unexpected event occurred. Several harpoons pierced through the bodies of both Yuta and the mermaid in an instant. The one who had attacked was Rin's husband, the pirate leader Fujita. They had been tracking Nami's boat all along, with the aim of using Yuta to locate the mermaid. As a result, they easily captured the legendary mermaid. When the pirates saw the mermaid's ability to come back to life, they all believed that mermaid flesh could grant eternal youth. As for Yuta, they simply threw him into the sea. Nami was also imprisoned in a warehouse by the pirates. However, At that moment, Rin, who had clearly been killed by Nami before, appeared unscathed before her. Nami, seeing Rin resurrected, couldn't help but feel bewildered for a moment, but she quickly accepted the reality, and speculated that Rin had also eaten mermaid flesh to come back to life. Rin did not elaborate much on this, she just told Nami that everything she had done was for the sake of the child in her belly, as pregnancy requires nourishment. That's why she had encouraged Yuta to find the mermaid, because only the freshest mermaid flesh could provide her with sufficient nutrition. At this moment, the pirates were discussing how to divide and consume the mermaid flesh. Nami was also brought over forcibly, because Fujita coveted her beauty and wanted her to be his concubine. However, Nami disdainfully spat at him, enraging Fujita, who attempted to throw her to her death. Just then, Yuta, who had just been revived, suddenly appeared and embraced Nami. Rin revealed the method to permanently kill Yuta, which was to chop off his head. Upon hearing this, Fujita immediately stated, whoever could chop off Yuta's head would be rewarded with a piece of mermaid flesh to eat. In an instant, the pirates all rushed forward. However, faced with the united attack of Yuta and Nami, these pirates were no match. In the chaos, Yuta threw a knife that struck Fujita's chest directly, further enraging him. Fujita pulled out the knife from his chest and engaged in a fight with Yuta. Unexpectedly, his subordinates took this opportunity to secretly consume the mermaid flesh. But the next moment, their bodies suddenly underwent a mutation. Each of them was in unbearable pain, and their appearances became extremely horrifying. At this moment, Rin, who was leisurely eating mermaid flesh on the side, finally revealed the truth. Mermaid flesh indeed was an elixir of immortality, but it was also a deadly poison. Only a few incredibly lucky individuals could attain eternal life, while the vast majority would either die on the spot or transform into monsters. Just after she finished speaking, all of these pirates transformed into hideous monsters. Unexpectedly, Fujita's body did not mutate. Instead, his wounds rapidly healed. It seemed he successfully resisted the mermaid's toxin, gaining the ability of immortality. Fujita was ecstatic at this moment, declaring that he would use his undying body to duel with Yuta. However, after a few rounds of fighting with Yuta, his eyes suddenly underwent a strange transformation. It turned out that his bodily changes were merely delayed due to his robust physique. At this point, Rin no longer concealed her true identity. She was not human but a higher-order mermaid capable of transforming into human form. The ordinary mermaids in the ocean were actually the nutrients necessary for their reproduction. Of course, the child she carried was not Fujita's, but that of her deceased husband. In fact, Rin had been pregnant 3 years ago, and the gestation period for higher mermaids is also 3 years. If Rin had not been captured by the pirates at that time, she would not have incited them to search for mermaids. Upon hearing this news, Fujita completely lost his mind. His body size grew several times, and despite the villagers shooting dozens of arrows at him, they could not inflict substantial harm. Yuta immediately leaped onto Fujita's back to attack. However, Fujita paid no attention to Yuta's assault. His sole focus was on Rin. Just as he was about to grasp Rin, she leaped into the sea, transforming into a beautiful mermaid as she submerged. Simultaneously, 2 small mermaids appeared by her side. They then vanished together into the depths of the ocean. After all was said and done, the villagers cleared away all the monsters. Nami's father also regained his health thanks to the effects of the mermaid flesh. After listening to Yuta's story, Mana fell into silence. At the same time, she also felt grateful that she had met Yuta, someone who, like her, possessed eternal life. Yuta and Mana set out once again on their journey to find the mermaid. However, on this day, while trying to catch a butterfly, Mana accidentally fell off a cliff. Yuta, in an attempt to save her, also fell down with her. At that moment, a man with big eyes happened to pass by. Seeing Mana's youth and beauty, he carried her back to his dwelling in a cave. Later, the big-eyed man went out hunting, and caught a wild boar to provide nourishment for the severely injured Mana. The following day, Mana had recovered. The big-eyed man roasted the wild boar for her to eat. However, while eating, Mana suddenly remembered Yuta and decided to go look for him. When the big-eyed man heard that Mana was planning to leave, he immediately knelt before her, pleading for her to stay a while longer. Seeing his innocent big eyes, Mana immediately softened. Mana saw the big-eyed man's clothes stained with blood, so she volunteered to help him wash them. He also told Mana about his past. The big-eyed man's name is Takata. He used to be just an ordinary fisherman. Afterward, he ate some mermaid flesh he happened upon, lost consciousness, and when he woke up, Everyone in the village was dead. Since then, he had been hiding in the deep mountains. Mana was the first woman Takata had encountered in hundreds of years, so he hoped she would stay and accompany him forever. Just then, Yuta arrived at the scene. It turned out that Yuta had been rescued by an old man named Kudo. Kudo informed him about a ferocious monster in the mountains, the one who had blinded him. He also told Yuta that the creature was immortal. No matter how severe the injuries, it would heal instantly. To kill it, one must crush its head. This inevitably made Yuta think of those humans who turned into monsters after consuming mermaid flesh. Consequently, he promptly asked Kudo to lead him to find Mana, but Takata was unwilling to let Mana leave, so he pushed her into a cave and blocked the entrance. However, Yuta was trapped under a huge rock. Takata once again pleaded with Mana to stay with him. Mana did not respond, but Takata already understood her true feelings. He knelt in despair and expressed his willingness to let Mana leave. However, Mana told Takata that both she and Yuta were humans who had consumed mermaid flesh. They could leave together. Upon hearing Mana's words, Takata was overjoyed. Just then, Kudo suddenly appeared in the cave. The dim light illuminated the cavern, revealing countless human corpses beneath Kudo's feet. It turned out that although Takata retained human consciousness, he often went mad, attacking humans indiscriminately. Kudo raised his hunting rifle at Takata, but Mana stepped forward to shield him. However, at that moment, Takata fell into another bout of madness. Yuta quickly pulled Mana aside, but Takata struck Kudo with a single blow, sending him flying. Mana hurriedly chased after them, continuously calling out Takata's name, hoping he would regain his senses. Yet Takata had completely lost his sanity. At a critical moment, Yuta hurled the spear with explosives tied to it at Takata. As Takata lay dying, he continued to call out Mana's name. Perhaps the pain brought by eternal life is the despairing loneliness it induces. A man sat on the ground, cradling the skeletal remains of his daughter, weeping bitterly. At that moment, a monk happened to pass by and, moved by the man's pitiful state, took him back to the temple. The monk used a mermaid gall stored in the temple and performed a resurrection ritual in order to revive the girl. Soon after, the girl was revived. However, to the monk's surprise, his act of kindness inadvertently created a man-eating monster, perhaps due to the mermaid gall. The resurrected girl could only sustain her life by consuming the gall of humans and animals, leading to numerous lives being claimed by her. Realizing the consequences, the monk resolved to find and kill the girl. Despite his efforts, he couldn't locate her. After an unknown period of time had passed, a father-daughter duo suddenly appeared in the small town. The father, Inoue, was very old, but his daughter, Hanako, was only 12 years old. They made a living by selling mermaid flesh. In order to prove that they were selling real mermaid flesh, Inoue would always first show the mermaid in the cage to everyone. Then, he would have Hanako cut open her own arm. The next moment, the wound on Hanako's arm would instantly heal. Witnessing this scene, the onlookers all believed it to be true, and the father-daughter duo's business thrived as a result. However, little did they know that the monk who had been searching for them for decades had also appeared at this moment. In the evening, the monk found Hanako, who had gone out alone to hunt. Without a word, he drew his sword and severed Hanako's arm. Just as the monk was about to deliver a fatal blow to Hanako, Yuta suddenly appeared and knocked out the monk. Subsequently, Yuta took Hanako back home. Upon returning home, Inoue reattached Hanako's severed arm. Witnessing this scene, Yuta immediately asked Inoue if Hanako had consumed mermaid flesh. Inoue did not deny it, but neither did he provide an answer. Therefore, Yuta disclosed his own secret of having consumed mermaid flesh to them. Despite being several hundred years old now, Yuta no longer desired eternal life. He simply wanted to revert to being a normal person. He hoped that Inoue could tell him the whereabouts of the mermaid flesh. After hearing Yuta's words, Inoue no longer concealed the truth. He told Yuta that Hanako had actually never consumed mermaid flesh, but he was unwilling to disclose the specific reasons. In the evening, as Yuta lay on the bed, puzzled by the situation, the next moment, Hanako, who was behind him, suddenly bit towards Yuta's body. Startled, Inoue quickly urged Yuta to leave the place. However, when Yuta came out, he encountered the monk he had previously knocked unconscious. The monk informed Yuta that his gallbladder had just been narrowly avoided being eaten. Subsequently, the monk told Yuta the story of this father and daughter, and asked him to delay Hanako for 7 days, because he needed to seclude himself during this time to enhance his own magical powers. The next day, Yuta found Hanako again. Hanako seemed somewhat apologetic. She said she had just wanted to taste the gallbladder of an immortal person last night, to see what it tasted like. Upon hearing this, Yuta was speechless. Over the next 7 days, Inoue took on a big business deal, which involved resurrecting the body of a princess. Meanwhile, Hanako would often seek out Yuta to spend time with him. As the two gradually interacted, Yuta began to empathize with the girl. Hanako told Yuta that after her resurrection, she had lost her previous memories. This led her to constantly question whether Inoue was truly her father. While Inoue aged over time, Hanako remained unchanged. She innocently expressed to Yuta her hope to accompany him in the future. Later, she told Yuta that if her father passed away from old age, she would make sure to live well. Looking at the innocent Hanako before him, Yuta couldn't help but recall the words of the monk. Instead of living in prolonged agony, he believed that the girl's true happiness lay in complete disappearance. However, the present Hanako kept dreaming of the future. With this in mind, Yuta immediately asked her if she was willing to go with him, because today was the last day as per his agreement with the monk. Hanako readily agreed. Before leaving, she decided to bid a proper farewell to her father. Unbeknownst to her, Inoue was right behind them at that moment and overheard their conversation. After Hanako left, Inoue found Yuta. In order to make Hanako stay, Inoue deceived Yuta and took him to the mountains, where he struck Yuta with a knife. Meanwhile, when Hanako returned home and didn't find her father, she immediately ran towards the mountains. However, the monk was already waiting there. He swiftly used his magic to extract the mermaid gallbladder from within Hanako. In that moment, Hanako remembered her promise to Yuta. She then cut off the monk's arm with a sword and quickly fled from the scene. When she arrived at the mountains, what she saw was her father stabbing Yuta's body with a knife. It turned out that Inoue intended to use Yuta's gallbladder to resurrect the princess and create someone with eternal life like Hanako. Hanako approached her father to stop him, but Inoue noticed the wound on Hanako's body and realized her mermaid gallbladder had been extracted. He sorrowfully embraced Hanako, because without the gallbladder, Hanako would soon revert to bones. At this moment, Inoue would rather accompany Hanako in jumping off the cliff, so at least she wouldn't be lonely. It's unknown how much time passed, but when Yuta found Hanako at the bottom of the mountain, she was still alive. At this moment, Hanako was unaware of the consequences of having her mermaid gallbladder removed. She still naively believed that she wouldn't die and would soon recover. She even asked Yuta in a silly manner, "Where are we going in the future?" "Wherever you go, I will follow you."